Welcome, everybody. I am thrilled to have with us Jim Mellon, the author of the new book, Moore's Law, An Investor's Guide to the New Agrarian Revolution. Did I get that right, Jim?
You got it. You enunciated it perfectly. You can do the voiceover on any ads that we do from now on.
Perfect.
Well done, Mikko.
Perfect. Good. I'll follow up with your team about that after this. Perfect. So, Jim, to get us started, what struck me about this book is that it's actually a massive service you've done. It's a thorough look at an upcoming industry with obviously massive financial potential, but also potential to change the world in many other ways. And it is complete with a listing of the players and investment opportunities and so forth. I have read many analyst reports about the industry and the sector, but this is probably the most thorough one that I've seen. What inspired you to write a book like this?
Well, thank you very much for your kind words for a start. I am, as I think most people who are investing in this industry, at least at the moment, primarily motivated by the cruelty involved to our fellow sentient beings on the planet. And so that's my main motivating factor. But obviously we know, and you know, because you're very much immersed in this, that the consumers really are much more motivated by taste, texture, and price. And so we need to get this industry to scale. So this is why the book is called Moore's Law, obviously a riff off the famous Moore's Law. This is why I also riff off grid parity in the electricity industry and use the phrase griddle parity, because griddle parity is the holy grail for both the plant-based producers and the cell ag producers of meats, fish, and materials. And what really got me excited about this was, in the same way that I'm involved in a day job in the biotech industry, the science is catching up with the aspiration of us all to do us, that means the community that we're involved in, to do better by the planet, better by human health, better by animals and so forth. And we're there. And we couldn't be at a more exciting time. And most people don't know anything about this. I mean, it's amazing how much ignorance there is about what we're up to. And so I thought, as I've done before, write a book to order my thoughts, to get access to key opinion leaders, to talk to them during the lockdown and write the book. And to give investors, which is what I do for a living, an opportunity to see what's good and what's bad and what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing. And obviously we have our own company listed in London called Agronomics, which I think you're familiar with. And we've got a new company called New Agrarian Companies setting up as well. But my main motivating factor is, let's stop being cruel, horrible, unethical towards animals. And if people knew what goes on their plates, typically, and it's 99% of what goes on their plates in the form of animal protein, they would be horrified.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much. Yeah, so you there's a couple of things I wanna pursue on what you said. So both actually to do with your past. How did you get to this point? Why are you so passionate about this area? You have a deep expertise and experience in business and finance. You referred to the biotech background as well, but it sounds like there's you refer to these ethical considerations. It sounds like there's a personal story there as well.
Yeah, it's a great. I mean, basically, Mikko, having spoken to so many people who are involved in this industry, I think most of them are motivated by the animal issue. The growth of intensive farming since the Second World War, particularly in the United States, and the unbelievably horrible conditions in which animals are kept, reared, and eventually slaughtered, and the impact on human health as a result of overuse of antibiotics, of hormones, all that sort of stuff that we are quite familiar with, and the emissions, of course, being a very big element of this as well. So my own background is I started as a fund manager and in Asia and then the United States and back to Asia. I had no interest in any of this, really, to be quite honest, apart from the fact that I love dogs and animals generally. And it wasn't until I started getting into the biotech industry, which was close to 20 years ago, and then that became my real passion and focus, that I realized that in parallel to what's happening in biotech, and there's a lot of great stuff happening in biotech, some of the biotech processes were being used in the construction of what we're interested in, which is the cell ag products that are beginning to come out of companies around the world. And because I understand some of the elements of the biotech processes, I could see that although these companies were burdened by biotech prices for their bioreactors, for their growth factors, for their media, all those could come down and are coming down, and that it was possible, and it's more than just a glimmer, for us to envisage a day, maybe in 5 years' time, when the price of, which is the tipping point, the price of the stuff coming out of labs that are producing food could be lower than the conventionally produced and barbaric way in which we currently produce animal protein. So it's a confluence of events, but my God, I mean, we are lucky to live in the world that we do today, because for the first time ever, we can see a way to avoid the horrific conditions that these poor animals have to live in for our benefit.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. The observation that a lot of people involved in this industry sector, really. I don't know if that's an accurate term either. It seems like there's so many different branches of this movement. A lot of people are motivated by the ethical considerations, whether it is for animal suffering, as you outlined, or for the environmental, or for human reasons. There's so many angles to approach this at. It's almost a blessing in disguise. I think one thing that I wanted to ask you, having looked at different industries and industry development in the past. So one thing that's often the new Agrarian Revolution, people and organizations involved in it try to look for models or playbooks from the past industries where things have changed. And I wonder if you've identified any kind of like these kind of macro patterns. I'll give you just an example. So the change that happened in the tobacco industry, for instance, that was primarily driven by regulation and taxation. Whereas in this case, we obviously regulation and lobbying, for example, that you touch on in the book, are important as well. But we are primarily playing with the free market. We're looking for, like you mentioned, griddle parity. Like once we get to the point where price, taste, and convenience are at parity, it becomes very difficult to see how the old model of things will continue. How do you see this? Is this something that's completely unique, or can we learn from other industries and sectors?
That's a great question, Mikko. Okay, so the reason the book's called Moore's Law is because Gordon Moore, nearly 50 years ago, posited, by the way, you can hear my dogs in the background, posited that semiconductors would come down in price by 50% every 18 months and would double in efficiency. And the trajectory of the cell ag industry is even better than that, actually, since Mark Post introduced his first cell ag burger. So I'm very encouraged by that. And I'm absolutely convinced that, this griddle parity is within sight. Yeah. And scale up is going to happen very fast, much faster than people think. I think the lesson that we can learn in the immediate past from the trajectory of this take up is in the alternative milk market. And 0.5% of the US market for milk was alternatives just 10 years ago. And this year it's 20%. I mean, last year was 20%. And two of the largest, in fact, the two largest dairy producers in the United States, Borden and Dean, went bust in the last year because the tipping point in agriculture, because the margins are so thin,
Yes.
is early. It's not, if they lose 20% of the market, they go bust. In meat, I think the same thing will happen, which is why the Cargills and Tysons and JBSs of the world are very interested in investing in the alternative, initially in plant-based stuff, of course, but ultimately they'll be involved in the cell ag stuff as well. So I think we look at that trajectory, and that's happened really very quickly indeed. And that's happened with plant protein-based milks. Not necessarily great for the environment, particularly in the case of almonds, not necessarily better for health, but it's just happened. And, when consumers are confronted with the choice of meat or seafood that has no hormones, no antibiotics, no toxins, nothing that's bad for you, possibly stuff that's good for you, and a very positive environmental and animal impact, why wouldn't they do it, especially if it's cheaper than the conventional stuff? And so I think the tipping point may be even quicker. And as you know, because you follow this very closely, RethinkX thinks that the tipping point will be 2030. We're 9 years away from 50% of the market being plant-based meat or cell ag meat. I'm absolutely sure that. I mean, I was skeptical when I first started writing the book that was going to happen, but I'm convinced that's going to happen now. I think, this is going to be an industry that will be overtaken much faster than any other industry in recent history.
Wow, that sounds very promising. This is, I mean, for many of these reasons that we've discussed, but also just in terms of like the past of industry and marketplace development. Like this is an industry that touches everybody in the world. Like everyone eats food. So this is will be a massive
it does,
change.
Mikko. And there's so much good stuff going on. It's not just about food and seafood, it's about materials. So cotton can be produced at a lower price without all the fertilizers and pesticides, without the backbreaking work and the boiling heat that is currently characterized with it. You can produce threads already that are better than the stuff that's produced from cotton grown material or whatever. You can produce leather already that's cheaper and better than the leather that's taken off calves, because the calves are the ones that get killed for the hides, basically, typically for luxury leather. And there are just so many wonderful things that are happening beyond the meat, the seafood, and the dairy market. And I when I started writing the book, about $400 million had gone into the sector. At the moment, we represent about a quarter of all that money. And I think it's about $1 billion now that is either gone or has been committed to the sector. I think by the end of this year, it'll be $5 billion. And I'm talking about the cell ag sector. So we're in the midst of a massive revolution. Meanwhile, the noise is focused on vertical farming, new techniques of, GPS run tractors and so forth. Those are just noise compared to what's going to happen in the lab grown foods business. They're just noise.
That's exciting. Yeah. In this variety of things you've seen, has there been anything that's really like blown your mind? Like you've seen something that you didn't expect in like the way people do things or techniques?
Yeah, I mean, from your own country, Solar Foods, obviously.
Oh, thank you for mentioning that. Yes.
Yeah, I always like to give a plug to the relevant nationalities. So, as you know, Solar Foods is producing protein out of thin air, and sounds too good to be true, but it is true. And it's ironic that Finland has almost no solar radiation, but the company's called Solar Foods. But I've just been in the Middle East, and I go to the Middle East often. I mean, obviously they're food insecure, and the stuff that Solar Foods is doing when they've got so much solar radiation and a need for protein that's home developed and homegrown is just tremendous. I was blown away by that. I was totally blown away by the stuff that's going on at Blue Nalu in
Yeah.
terms of seafood, because they'll be on the market in the United States by the end of this year. I'm kind of intrigued by one of the companies that's involved in the breast milk uh,
Mm.
market. I'm talking about bio milk,
Yep.
not turtle tree, but bio milk, and think that that's a really interesting concept, because having lived in Asia for so long, I know that they're really worried about infant formula and the contamination and all that sort of stuff, and that's a very big market. I mean, people don't realize just how big the infant formula market is around the world, but particularly in Asia. So there's so many strands of this dynamic industry that are going forward. Now, we know that the first products on the market will be those that don't require regulation. You don't eat leather, you don't eat threads, you don't eat cotton. So that there's no regulatory problem for them. We know that Singapore has recently allowed Eat Just's chicken, cell-grown chicken to be on the market, although it's a very diluted chicken product, mostly plant-based stuff. We know that in Israel, you've got Super Meat and their chicken product. So it's all happening quite quickly. My own view is that we'll see meat on the market in the US within about 18 months, and in Europe the same time frame. And then we go to griddle parity. We will be there really, really quickly. And it is possible that in cell ag products, we could get below the current price of conventional products. Whereas in plant-based products, I think it's going to be much harder. I think it's going to be much harder for them to get below the price. They can get to griddle parity probably by the end of this year in some cases, but not much below. And just looking at all the economics of it. So my money, although we've got a big position in Live Kindly, is largely on the cell ag stuff.
Right. Right. Okay. That's an interesting observation as well, for sure. Yeah.
And you hear my dogs in the background. They are non-meat eating dogs.
Oh wow.
Although the cats, as you know, are obligatory carnivores.
Yes.
The cat we have has to eat some meat. We don't like it, but
Yes.
as soon as there's something available, they're going to get that. Sorry about the noise, by the way.
No. That's lovely. That's an
It adds a bit
soundtrack
of
for this.
it adds a bit of humanity
Exactly.
to the whole project. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's true. That's true. And yeah, on the point of cats, like you do cover pet foods as well in the book, and that's another.
I think that's going to be huge.
Yeah.
The regulatory pathway is quicker.
Yes.
Dogs and cats don't care what it looks like as long as it tastes good.
I've seen
And
that
the market is enormous. I mean,
Yeah.
I think in the US, the pet food market is, if I said $60 billion, I don't think I'm far off. And so, we humans eat, well, a lot of humans, not you and me, eat a lot of meat. But, I don't know if this is true or not, but I've read from a reputable source that the average American will eat 80,000 animals, that includes fish and chickens, in their average lifespan. That is unbelievable. That's
That sounds right.
80,000 living beings that have to be slaughtered for the benefit of one single human.
Right.
It's
Right.
horrible.
Yeah. The scale of the problem is massive. The statistics are just mind-boggling. I'll need to check this, but I think I read somewhere just now that 70% of all living birds on Earth right now are waiting to be killed for human consumption. 70% of all birds. So yeah, so this is obviously these are massive leverage opportunities in this industry to change things for the better for so many sentient beings out there.
So, yeah, I mean, Mikko,
go ahead.
Yourself, I assume, how long have you been a non-meat eater for?
Non-meat eater for 8 years now.
Right, I'm 6.
Yeah.
And you're much younger than me. I wish I got the message or in line with this mission earlier in my life, but it's better late than never.
Yes.
I mean, since I got into this, there are so many people like you who shine through with goodness and with a desire to change things. I can't but help feel I'm part of a family of great importance to the future of this world.
Yes, I think that's I'm happy to hear you feel that way. I feel that that sentiment shared by many in the working in the space as well, whether it's a nonprofit organization or a for-profit business trying to get new products into the market. So yeah, it is fascinating. And actually, on that point, I want to let me just start to get us wrapped up with this last point. Your book, Jim, that is the guideposts for investors interested in this movement. That's the best like single contained piece of information I've seen for anybody interested in investing, whether you're from small to large scale. What are your thoughts for folks who want to get involved in the industry, but not necessarily as investors? Young people graduating, looking for job opportunities, trying to decide on career paths. What would you recommend people to focus on?
Oh, that's a great question. Look, I think that this will be a great career path for anyone who's young and anyone who's motivated. I would just, you know, read up as much as possible about the companies and the industry. In the back of my book, I've got links to all of those companies, so you could actually just email them out of the blue and then ask them, do you have any opportunities for jobs? What would you recommend, et cetera, et cetera. Create your own network that way. And join in the newsletters uh, from the charities, particularly the Good Food Institute, and just immerse yourself in this area. But if there are any young, motivated people who are have the requisite background and so forth, and chime with us, we want more people to work with us on this. So get in touch with Anthony Chow, my colleague at Agronomics, because we're looking and we want to hire people, and other companies want to hire people. This is going to be one of the world's major industries very, very soon. And it needs people who have a personal commitment, I think, to the ethics of the industry. Don't look at it as a cynical way of making money. You probably will end up making money if you get into the right companies, but look at it, first of all, as a mission to change the way in which people eat food, a mission to change the way in which we treat fellow sentient beings on this planet.
Wow, that's very exciting to hear. Yes, absolutely. This conversation has filled me with optimism.
Well, I love talking to you, Mikko, and I'm looking forward to meeting you in person at one of
Likewise.
these conferences in the next year. Let's all get the jab and let's all do good for mankind.
Perfect. I think that's the plan. Thank you so much for taking the time, Jim.
I enjoyed it a lot. Thanks very much.
Perfect.